Alright, Arsonist. Everyone's least favorite pyromaniac who is also a robot. This individual is the subject of a lot of controversy about he's either a class that takes no skill to play or requires a lot of skill to play well actually. You either hate or love him depending on who you ask. Strangely enough, the weapons available to Arsonist makes it a gray area on which type of class Arsonist could truly be. Is he supposed to be a support class? A full-on offensive class? A brainless class? Nobody actually knows though. Arsonists in general tend to be a mixed bag of them either being really good or really bad, and it's very obvious of what kind of playstyle they use after watching them after a minute or two. They either go off on their own and have little regard for their own team, or they actually support their team, which is super rare and nice to see. But anyways, we're discussing weapon stereotypes but for Arsonist again, so if your favorite weapon gets a negative stereotype, don't take it too seriously, it's all for the sake of jokes and comedy. Got it? Alright, let's go. The stock Flamethrower. This thing is a great example of consistency and reliability since you really can't mess up using this weapon, and quite a few people use this weapon for multiple different reasons, so let me explain. Firstly, you have the new player who just started playing the game for the first time with no unlocks at all, or these guys know and understand that the stock Flamethrower is the best primary weapon for Arsonist. Also mentioning these guys are combo Arsonists, but because of them not liking the afterburn penalty of the degreaser, so they use this weapon instead. Or these guys want to combo Arsonist, but also want to have more air blasts to use, and be able to WM1 as well if they mess up using their secondary weapon. Or you know, that one clueless new player who didn't realize they had a shotgun, so they just go around as a clueless WM1 Arsonist who either just dies incredibly easy, or they somehow gets lots of kills even though all they're doing is holding down mouse 1 and holding down W as well. Nobody really uses this weapon since, you know, the 20% damage penalty is gonna shove most people away, and the 100% 50 air blast cost isn't helping the situation at all. You can normally see these guys trying to flank the enemy team for those crits, but any competent team can spot them, so they get shut down really easily. Most of the time, you can see these guys trying to do janky movement stuff, like what you see with face stab agents to get those free crits without actually flanking, even though it's not gonna work. So expect these guys to be free points as long as you can have good aim and can catch them by surprise without them noticing you. Half the time, if you're a trooper or annihilator and just getting near them will make them panic M2, wasting all their ammo, but if they spot you, try to bait them into thinking you'll shoot so they'll waste all their ammo. So they'll become a sitting duck. It's really overshadowed by any other flamethrower once you think about it. Oh, and people who have played the game long enough know that the previous hitboxes from the last two updates used to be really janky, and half the time they would get random crit even if you were facing them. So be happy that isn't a thing anymore. It's just a direct downgrade if you can't flank the enemy team, so use stock if it's too difficult. Alright, these guys are definitely combo Arsonists, no questions asked. These guys could either be god tier combo Arsonists who can kill pretty much anyone with a simple shotgun, or flare gun, etc. Or, you know, the mediocre ones who mess up completely and are basically free points to farm off of, which is about 80% of the people who use this weapon. Unsurprisingly enough, almost every Arsonist who uses this has a 90% chance of using the Axetinguisher and or flare gun, or less commonly, the detonator. And they have some kind of weird infatuation with the Axetinguisher as well, so just keep that in mind. Also, there are two strange behaviors these people commonly do, such as doing WM1, even though this weapon does less afterburn damage, even though, you know, stock exists for that exact reason, or just use the flog if you're in the masochism. And when they see any kind of projectile, they just spam M2, wasting all their ammo as well, and with the plus 25% air blast cost, makes them free food to anyone. So just use a shotgun or anything that isn't a projectile and just obliterate them once they run out of ammo for their flamethrower. I mean, I guess these guys are typically Arsonist mains, but they don't like really using the stock flamethrower because of its slower switch speed. Oh, and there's also that one clueless person who saw someone else use this weapon and thought it was a stock reskin as well. Or they came from TF2. That's it, really. This godforsaken thing is the very definition of the well-known WM1 stereotype that everyone knows and doesn't love. 90% of the time you normally see this thing on low level players who read this gives 8 seconds of guaranteed mini crits when it's fully charged, but end up being some of the easiest people to kill and farm funds off of in the entirety of TC2. But surprisingly, some arsonists who use this weapon can be some of the most annoying people to deal with in the entire game, even more than arsonists who use the Axetinguisher. Since some arsonists who use this will back away from you if you try to get near them and somehow be able to knock your crosshair off of them, causing you to miss your shots and just to be free energy for their flog, before somehow managing to kill a whole team by holding down nothing more than W and M1 at the same time. In some cases, you can see a doctor pocketing them without healing anyone else just to dominate and annoy the rest of the server if the other team isn't that good. And if the other team isn't that competent enough, it can eventually lead to the opposite team just being spawn camped, with an arsonist being pocketed with a crits doctor, so just prepare not to have fun if this happens, with crits being stacked on top of crits basically. I mean, there are some other cases where people know about the brain dead WM1 stereotype being applied here as well, and they just don't either care about them being called that, or just want to go out of their way just to annoy the rest of the server. It's not like they could help their team either way, since Air Blast on this thing can't put out teammates that are on fire, or push people away, which is a giant downside of this weapon for crits that aren't even fully guaranteed. So don't expect any kind of teamwork from these guys since they'll be off on their own with no regard for their team. And yeah, this thing still has Air Blast, but it destroys the projectile, meaning you can't reflect it and punish troopers and annihilators. Including the fact if you had used stock instead, you could have gotten lucky enough to reflect a clueless trooper's or annihilator's rocket or pipe into an entire crowd, and change the entire course of the match because of a single mistake in the span of 10 seconds. Besides the fact, even if you had gotten the crits fully charged, it's not guaranteed you'll even wipe out an entire team or anyone at all, because it takes just one random sentry gun, revved up brute, or even a competent player and team to end it, since, you know, those crit sounds are going to be super obvious. And if they have ears, they'll definitely try to figure out where you are and avoid you at all costs. I mean, yeah, this thing is still good, but when's the last time you've seen a flog arsonist actually do well that wasn't them being heavily pocketed by a doctor or them just spawn camping another team since they weren't that good? But hey, that's just me. It's just a downgrade if you can't get it charged, but use whatever's more fun for you. Here's what their keyboard and mouse setup usually looks like. Stock Flamethrower but in shotgun form. These guys are definitely hipsters since this weapon is essentially WM1 but more concentrated. They usually appreciate novelty more than actual purpose. Most of the time, it's clueless new players who saw this weapon had a 300% damage increase to enemies on fire and just thought they had found a broken weapon. Even though most of the time, these guys are pretty easy to kill since 90% of the people who use this weapon can't aim the projectile after 2 to 3 shots max and just die afterwards. Also mentioning that some people use this as a crutch, shockingly, even though they can't aim the projectile to begin with, and could have been better off with stock just holding down mouse 1 and charging into an entire crowd mindlessly. In all honesty, not a lot of people use this weapon. So either it's the clueless new player as mentioned before, or someone who just got bored and wanted to see how unused this weapon was, or someone who only used it for the 300% damage increase but can't aim the projectile at all. Oh, and some people who have played this game for a long time knew that when the Dragon's Fury was first added in, it used to be super broken and the fire knockback was absolutely insane. So thank God that thing isn't a thing anymore.
Alright, here's where we'll find out who my real birth-in-laws are.
Did I ever tell you about my parents' tragic story?
Very good. Now, while I hacked the database, you create a diversion.
A diversion? Oh, this is a caper, like in the movies.
Speaking of movies, you ever seen Man on Fire?
Is that the one with the... Oh, good job, How'd you know I was fireproof? I didn't even know. Wait, you did know I was, right? I'm just gonna go with yes and preserve the friendship.
Not a lot of people use this weapon, but it's shockingly actually pretty good with being a combo arsonist, arson bro, agent checking most of the time, and crowd control. It encourages you to use your secondary more than using WM1, since this weapon has a 50% damage penalty, but it has increased afterburn damage in time when you set someone on fire, which can be amazing if you set someone or an entire team on fire, then running away to let the fire chip away their health, while your team jumps in to finish off whoever is still alive on fire. But it's pretty annoying to play against, since once you get set on fire by this thing, just expect to be on fire until you die, or just hope you have a competent arsonist or anything that can either put out the fire, or can give you health to survive the fire. But moving on, these guys like to harass the entire enemy team with this weapon, especially agent mains with the increased afterburn damage in time. So if any agent mains are watching this, just be careful to not get set on fire by this thing. If an Arsonist doesn't manage to kill you, then the entire enemy team will be eventually bound to notice a random fire moving towards a health kit. They are also combo Arsonists, but don't use the meta stock or degreaser flamethrower. Also mentioning, these guys either rely on afterburn way too much since they usually suck at aiming their secondary. You normally see them playing more defensively compared to other Arsonists. And just expect to be on fire about 85% of the match if there aren't any doctors around.
And we do a little showing, just a little bit of showing.
Okay, everyone gets it. You like annoying everyone else on the other team with air blast. Like, holy crap, man, can you just relax and not destroy Mouse 2 and not send people flying across the map? Like, Jesus. Well then, this weapon is certainly interesting to say the least. You know the WM1 stereotype for stock and any other flamethrower? Well, this weapon is the exact opposite of that. These guys know exactly what they are doing with this weapon once they equip it, and are super annoying and deadly to deal with in one situation only. Are you near an environmental hazard? Because if you are, expect to die from that 99% of the time if you get near this guy using this weapon. These guys will absolutely 100% attempt to air blast you off a cliff or into whatever environmental hazard they can find. You can normally see these guys hiding around cliffs and buzzsaws, so just don't go near those areas so you don't die from them. Otherwise, these guys are pretty easy to kill as long as you don't get sent flying across the map otherwise. This thing is just a giant middle finger to agents, troopers, and annihilators. If they know how to actually air blast any people and projectiles who main those classes, just switch to something else if they see you. Or, you know, just use the foiler and the crowbar, they both exist for a reason. I can more than say that everyone hates these people who use this weapon regardless of class choice. I mean, yeah, there's also the small group of people who are arson bros, but those guys are almost non-existent. Also mentioning that some people use this to play air blast rocket or grenade tennis with each other. And if anyone had paid attention to this weapon in general, they would have noticed that the kill icon for this weapon is the 2020 Flamethrower model, while its actual held model is somewhat based on the 2016 model. Not the pistol model, by the way, albeit it being colored black instead. Here's an example of how they normally play in-game. These guys are also combo arsonists, but can either be complete crap or godly with this weapon depending on who you see. These guys usually think they're pretty good at the game, and there are in fact a few people who are definitely good with using the flare gun, but that's only making up about 5% of the flare gun users. The rest of the 95% usually can't even aim flares or projectiles to begin with, or even hit a revved up brass biker brute standing in front of them, or the broadside of a barn. These guys are usually hyper aggressive or really passive depending on the player, but it's a mixed bag. Half the time they'll just set someone on fire and just charge in front of them, only to be free pickings to the other team. You can see them corner peeking most of the time, but they usually do this with brutes and marksmen most of the time for some odd reason. Even though, you know, the detonator exists. Sometimes they might get a lucky flare shot kill that will make them think that they're good at the game, until that one flanker just pops up and destroys them. These guys are usually free points, but just in case, go marksman or move around them quickly if they get near you, since they usually have little to no prediction skills at all. This weapon isn't used a lot, which is really shocking since this thing is basically the best arsonist secondary for almost any situation. It's good for consistent damage even though it's overshadowed by WM1 and other combo secondaries. If you see an arsonist using this weapon, they are either completely new to the game and it's the only secondary unlock they have when they first started, or they are aware that the shotgun is the best and most versatile arsonist secondary available. These guys don't need combo weapons or anything flashy looking, they just need a stock shotgun and some people to shoot it at, which is really respectable. Overall, these guys could either be new players and they only pull it out when they somehow fail at WM1, or it's a super experienced player who doesn't need anything special to play Arsonist well. If you see an Arsonist using this weapon, just check how they play to figure out what skill level they are with this. They are either super deadly or easy to kill depending on how good their aim is. These guys also want to use stock but prefer burst damage over consistency, but usually can't aim stock since it has 2 more shells than stock. I mean, half the time they still rely on WM1, but only pull it out when someone they're fighting gets near them. I mean, the same stereotypes from stock still apply here, but adding those 2 as well. For some reason, most arsonists who use this weapon have the pool shark hat equipped as well, including the afflexed arson. The arsonists who use this weapon are also hipsters since, this weapon is just a husk of what it used to be, and is technically the worst shotgun for arsonist. These guys are still combo arsonists, but they aren't lethal at all, since the damage penalty and the smaller clip size are the main factors for nobody using this weapon. This weapon was dead the moment it was reworked almost a year ago, so unless Rov reworks this weapon to be better, just expect nobody to use this weapon at all. This used to be the meta for combo arsonists for its past 50% extra bullets per shot and its reload on kill stat. It's only somewhat seen in versus bosses because of crits, which makes it decent, but that's it really. So let's just give a moment of silence for this once amazing weapon, adding it to the graveyard of dead weapons. These guys are definitely combo arsonists, since, you don't see anyone else using this weapon except for these guys. Half the time the people who use this just got bored and wanted to see how this weapon works out of curiosity, then switched to whatever weapon they were using after a single death. You probably would be better off with the stock shotgun since, 90% of the people who use this weapon try loading it while fighting someone and either win because of the other person having terrible aim, or get absolutely steamrolled because the other person they're fighting can actually aim. So if you have good aim, just try to shoot them before they get any shells in this weapon, so they become easy pickings. But anyways, since almost nobody uses this, you can't tell how good someone is with this weapon. So just watch them for a bit and you should eventually figure out their skill level. Most of the time these guys are hipsters as well, since this weapon is almost never considered to be used by most competent combo arsonists, and want to seem unique to everyone else even though it changes nothing.
Mission begins in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
They will perish.
Ow!
You are now through the dungeon.
Discount Scorch Shot. These guys just can't aim flare guns, but still want to harass the entire enemy team. I mean, why else would you be using this weapon? It's actually kind of funny fighting these guys since these guys will just hide far away from the actual battle, like how most marksmen do. And when you do get near them, they'll start jumping around a lot like how most flankers do, and just start spamming the detonator and pull out their melee and just chase you if they feel desperate enough to kill you. Or they use WM1. 1 or 2 shotgun shells is more than enough to kill these guys since their whole playstyle is more around being an inconvenience, more than an actual threat, which is more annoying than actually being effective or lethal. Or these guys are using it for more of a flank-heavy playstyle since you can blast jump with this weapon. But it's not as good as actual rocket jumping, but just enough to be viable. Some clueless new players only use this weapon since they saw it had a 50% damage increase to people on fire, and thought they had found something OP even though it only does mini crits. And once you get into melee distance, they'll usually start freaking out and panicking since they have a long-range weapon instead of a close-range weapon. That's it really.
Don't got much time, Doc. Ah! Your work has not gone unnoticed.
Yes.
This stock weapon was always dead the moment this game came to life, even with the state of being able to get rid of any debuffs being added after so many years. Even though, the Grill Scout is so much better than the Fire Extinguisher, this thing just sucks. There's no easy way to sugarcoat it. Besides, everyone is going to agree with this statement to the point where it's just super depressing to think about it. Nobody uses this weapon since it's super situational and most people aren't going to pay attention to the arsonists holding this weapon, since they'll be rushing over to a health kit or hiding till the debuff they have goes away. Half the time the arsonists who use this weapon are too busy to notice someone has a debuff on them, and you have to hope they notice you and see you. And you stand still for so long and hope the debuff you have doesn't kill you. And if you're super unlucky, someone manages to kill you both since you were both standing still for so long, such as a crit sprue, random grenades, the laser rifle. I could go on, but that's not the point. Basically, any other arsonist melee is already a direct upgrade from this weapon. The only people you're going to see using this is a completely new player who just started playing the game for the first time, and it's the only unlock they have. Someone getting bored and wanting to see how bad this weapon really is. Maybe a hipster as well, but that's just rare. These guys are still total bros, but it's just really ineffective and inefficient to melee your entire team. Especially that they're always going to be moving around, and most of the debuffs you have to deal with is them being on fire. And you have your Flamethrower, which has air blast and gives you 50 health instead of 0. And you probably would be better off using the Girl Scout as flanker. I mean, I have an idea on how to rework this weapon, but don't take it seriously. But if any devs are watching and like the idea, go ahead and use it if you want. Instead of having to hit a teammate to get rid of their debuff as its current stats, try reworking it to be more like an actual fire extinguisher in real life, that shoots foam that will wash off any debuffs on a teammate, using something similar to the Flamethrower animation, that can also show invisible agents. I mean, yeah, this still won't change anything, but at least it might make it more interesting than what we currently have, but that's just me. Alright, I'm just gonna go straight to the chase. The Axetinguisher is still pretty overpowered for arsonists, and somewhat a crutch in my opinion. But that's just me. And half the time it's for arsonists who can't even play the class effectively and most of the time rely on the broken melee hitboxes TC2 has, which can be ridiculous sometimes. And yes, before any arsonist mains start getting angry in the comment section and start attempting to riot outside of my house about how this weapon isn't a crutch, or it deserves to be reverted, or even telling me it requires skill to use, you're basically getting guaranteed mini crits for only pulling out your Flamethrower, holding down M1 with fire that's guaranteed, and pulling out your melee for free mini crits with no effort needed, which is still pretty busted. Everyone just hates these guys regardless of class choice. Well, everyone except who mains the Axetinguisher. You get 94 damage for only pressing 4 buttons while the other person is guaranteed to be on fire, which is almost guaranteed they'll die once they get set on fire, unless it's a trooper or brute with full health, or unless their team is actually competent and can stop them before anyone else gets set on fire, which is almost impossible. These guys on a skill level can either be complete crap with this weapon, setting someone on fire then somehow missing their axe swing causing them to be weaker, and or kill themselves on accident, which can turn into free easy funds and dominations to farm off of. Or these guys can be some of the most dangerous arsonists to ever deal with, even though, you know, this thing is just really overpowered with a low skill ceiling. So if they equip anything else, they'll just be free points. You normally see them equipping combo weapons that they can't aim, most commonly the flare gun, so that if they somehow mess up the axe swing, they'll still hope for that cheeky crit kill. Also, you can use the hit yourself on miss stat to be able to double jump, which can be a great mobility tool to ambush people, so keep that in mind. For some reason, the people who use this weapon always wear the Affluxed Arson, the Firefighter, and the Gas Hazmat, and the rarest of them all, the Lil Munchie hat. If you ever play Marksman and or Brute and manage to kill them, for example, they'll try to use the flare gun or the detonator just to harass you from long range. These guys can be seen as some of the worst arsonists in the game who can't even kill someone with guaranteed mini crits, who are also free funds. Or you can see them just going on massive kill streaks with this weapon, just killing entire teams with this weapon without any second thoughts. These guys are also very defensive about using it. Oh yeah, and they'll use WM1 if they mess up with their secondary 90% of the time. They'll start spamming Air Blast until they can melee you, if you try to melee duel them as well. And most of these guys think they're some of the best players to grace TC2, even though they're relying on free mini crits for kills. I mean, I guess there are some people who use this weapon since some people would technically consider this to be a direct upgrade to stock. And even the Improvised Innovator. But you could have done the same damage if you could actually play Arsonist effectively and not look like an obnoxious person to everyone around you. One of their most common behaviors you can see is once you get set on fire by them, they will just insistently chase you down wherever you go until you kill them or they kill you. Regardless, even though there could be 2 crit brutes and 2 level 3 sentry guns in front of the Arsonist chasing you, because that sweet mini crit kill matters more than staying alive. Which means if you're lucky enough, you can bait them into random sentry guns, revved up brutes, environmental kills, or everyone's favorite, taunt kills.
I need some help.
Tightly strapped.
Deep to left, really deep. See ya.
God damn it, help me!
Yes.
You know the term man's best friend with humans and dogs? We'll replace them with both mechanic and arsonists who use this weapon effectively. Everyone loves these guys regardless of their class choice. Well, everyone except agent mains. These guys are total bros to their entire team, especially mechanic mains. So if any mechanic mains are watching and you see a Homewrecker arsonist on your team, stick close with him because he's definitely going to be sticking with you as well. So just babysit them whenever it's needed and they'll be a super valuable asset to you and your team. Because you never know when that one agent main just trick stabs your entire team and starts sapping your mechanic's entire nest, and they manage to kill the agent, and start rushing over to unsap your buildings while protecting them from annihilators and troopers. So to any arsonist mains who use this weapon effectively, you guys are absolute total bros to your team, and any mechanic mains would love to have you on their team. So thanks a lot. You're keeping up their buildings, which helps your team out as well. But anyways, these guys are total arson bros, or pie bros in some cases, who can be incredibly useful to mechanics and can be a giant hindrance to agents taking their sappers off and spy checking constantly, and reflecting projectiles to save buildings, or the guys who also equip this weapon but forget they have it. Or they play too aggressive so they aren't going to help out most of the time. Also mentioning, these guys just either hate combat mechanics or just want to destroy an entire mechanic's nest. Or it's that one clueless new player who didn't read stats or only saw a giant paragraph of buffs without looking at its actual stats, since more blue letters mean better weapon, obviously. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure why it has the stat melee damage pierces damage resistant effects from the battalion's backup when it's deployed, and the Dead Ringer. Since if you try to get into melee range, you'll more than likely die, since those are usually hotspots for entire teams to be at if you chase or get near them. These guys sometimes equip the SM2 prototype, so if you see someone using this with the Homewrecker, expect them to be 100% guarding a mechanic nest nearby. And sometimes you might see them trying to melee kill you with this weapon, but it has a 25% damage penalty, so it's not too bad to deal with as long as you can aim 2 shotgun shells. There's also a cruel irony to this weapon if you team up with a friendly agent, so letting them constantly sap an enemy mechanic's sentry gun, and you jumping in with a Homewrecker to destroy it instead of taking the sapper off, as if you were on their own team, which is pretty funny. Discount katana, but better. These guys are also asking for a medic, but in the most subtle way possible, since, this thing gives 50% of your health back if you kill someone with it. And it's pretty obvious to see. I mean, I guess there's also the clueless player who didn't realize this thing got reworked and doesn't have the speed boost anymore, and forgot to read its stats and only checks it after they die. It's kind of meta in versus bosses since, the kill on stat hit is changed to hit on stat in that game mode. And it's used more as a stall tactic, if anything. Nothing else for me to talk about, honestly. Discount Extinguisher. There are a few stereotypes for this weapon, so let me explain. These guys either got attracted by the 25% damage bonus, they want to use the extinguisher but are aware of what everyone thinks about people using that weapon, so they use this to not seem like jerks to everyone else. Or these guys are also asking for a doctor in another really obvious way. Also mentioning, these guys understand that doctors are almost non-existent and will usually go off on their own and be very independent. But you shouldn't expect any kind of teamwork from them, since they'll usually be more hyper-aggressive compared to most arsonists when they have this weapon on them. Other than that, there's nothing really else. I mean, or these guys will like using this as an oversized pizza cutter as a meme weapon.
Fantastic!
Gotcha now, Mamma Mia!
Yes.
Look, guys! Hell yeah!
Does anyone actually use this weapon seriously ever since it got released? There's probably nobody in existence who uses this weapon seriously, since it's basically a direct downgrade from stock. I mean, you'll always see it on clueless new players who started the game for the first time who thought this thing looked cool. And I mean, it kind of does. Especially when you see how it looks with crits on. But it's just not that good, honestly. You'd probably be better off using the Improvised Innovator. Most of the time, you see these guys being hyper-aggressive with this weapon, thinking that because of this weapon giving health when this weapon's afterburn starts damaging someone, they'll think they'll have a mini doctor on them once it starts burning. But the healing isn't that good, and just 2 shotgun shells is enough to kill them. Also adding, this thing has a 25% damage penalty, which isn't helping the case at all. The only time the healing could be useful is just hitting someone then running away, but if there's a flanker with milk, a competent doctor, or an arsonist, or even a dispenser, the 10 seconds of guaranteed fire when you hit someone isn't going to be very effective for such a small amount of health. Or you enjoy harassing agents or anyone else on the other team with the 10 seconds of guaranteed afterburn. Or these guys like watching those 1000-degree knife videos on YouTube.
Pleasing. Not good. This is nice.
Oh!
These guys are also Arsonist mains, but they haven't fallen for the Axetinguisher meta. These guys prefer mobility over damage output, but there's a wide variety in skill levels when people use this, from either them being crappy arsonists to being an amazing arsonist. Most of them tend to take the game more seriously and usually have a higher experience level of playing arsonist than most people do on average. So if you see someone using this weapon, just watch them to get a better idea of their own skill level. Most of the time you see them running shotguns. Strangely enough, not too many arsonists use this weapon even though it's an amazing utility tool. Most of the time these guys are pretty competent, or these guys want to be a discount tricky. And that's it, all of Arsonist's weapon stereotypes covered in this video. But before you go, I've decided to add any missed stereotypes and weapons from other classes if they get reworked, or if a new stereotype pops up, or if I missed one, like how I did with Flanker's weapons in Trooper's video. So if I missed any weapon stereotypes, please tell me what I missed so I can cover every single stereotype possible. I'm probably going to regret this in the future, but hey, I can't leave any possible stereotypes out, so yeah. Oh, by the way, Rolf, amazing job with the summer update that came out. But you know, you could probably try to give us a date on when reworks or an update comes around, since every time I post something there's always a rework log or update every 2 days afterwards, invalidating these videos. But anyways, let's continue on. These guys are definitely running projectile weapons or any throwable weapons. Even though, strangely enough, barely anyone uses this with rechargeable weapons and usually replace it with a pistol most of the time, which is kind of stupid, since you're basically ignoring the 50% fill rate for rechargeable weapons when you kill someone with this, which could have been more of a supportive role helping your team or being able to basically get free projectiles if you aim correctly. But these guys are still gonna harass you from long range regardless of their weapon choices. I mean, there are only two kinds of people who use this weapon. The new player who started the game and has the pistol as their only secondary, the stock purist who insists on using this because of its extended clip and more damage output over time and faster firing speed compared to the conventional, and hasn't fallen for the conventional meta. I mean, this weapon is overshadowed mainly by the conventional and any other flanker secondary. Not to say that the stock pistol is a bad weapon, it's just that nobody likes the giant amount of recoil and spread this weapon has. This is the meta secondary weapon for flanker mains and for most people alike. People of varying skill levels use this, from the tryhard flanker who can aim all his shots regardless of what weapon they use, to the decent or terrible ones who usually run into people and die easily. There's something for everyone in this weapon. And yes, this weapon is still amazing even after its rework. Most of the time, they'll try to snipe and harass you from long range, sometimes pairing this with the babyface blaster or soda popper to get free charge. Or it's that new player who saw this weapon had a 50% more accuracy stat and 33 damage increase, but can actually do decent with it, instead of being complete garbage like with most other weapons. Most of the time, they'll just try to harass marksmen, sentry guns, brutes who are revved up, or really anything that is standing still. Sometimes these guys are marksman mains, but I can't really tell. Nobody uses this. I mean, since, you know, the conventional exists. I guess these guys want those mini crits when someone is blast jumping or faster firing speed. There's nothing much for this weapon, honestly. Winger but passive. Discount Atomizer. These guys either got attracted by the 20% damage increase, or saw that you can triple jump with this, and since you don't get bleeding anymore when you hit yourself, they've decided to use this. Though the Atomizer exists, and it takes less health, so... Some people consider it to be a direct upgrade to stock if you can actually use it, or use it as a mobility tool, even though, you know, the Sneakers, the Winger, the Lupara DB, and Atomizer are better choices. Other than that, nothing else has changed for this weapon actually. There's a rare chance you might see someone using this weapon, and then whenever they get a kill on someone, they will say something along the lines of, "Get fished," and or say, "Fish," "fish," or a spaced out fish, something like this. Most of the time uncontrollably. Hey guys, look, funny fish, ha 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 ha, funny fish, I'm funny, right guys?
Dude, look, the joke you're making isn't even funny, and it literally never will be.
It's been done to death and nobody finds it funny, so just keep quiet unless you know something that's actually gonna help us win.
Ha 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 ha, I'm so funny, aren't I? Ha 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 ha, fish funny, ha ha, everyone look at me, I'm super funny for using this weapon and saying fish.
Thank you, I'm getting sick of listening to this guy.
Alright, that's Flanker's updated weapon stereotypes. Now onto Trooper's weapons. You either want to play Flanker, but it's taken up by those clueless new players who keep dying and never switch, or you hate those Arsonists who keep spamming Air Blast and sometimes combo this with the crowbar so they're completely immune to Air Blasts. So if any Arsonists are watching this, and if you see a Trooper with this, you better hope you can aim a shotgun, since these guys can't get shoved around anymore.
These guys got attracted by the plus 25% clip size, since you know they need more rockets or they have bad rocket management. On top of needing infinite ammo as well, that's really it.
Panic Attack but in rocket launcher form. These guys will absolutely try to blow up groups of players that are together at basically any chance they get, and have a high chance of blowing themselves up if you get close enough to them. If you have overheal, you can just tank those rockets to farm free points off of them. Sometimes they equip the man-treads to spam rockets whenever they see someone. This also has the same stereotype I mentioned in the Wrecker's Yard section, but they prefer the nuke-looking projectile and more mobility with the gunboats instead of the Wrecker's Yard. Discount Direct Hit. Also Lupara DB but in rocket launcher form. A quick stereotype being added here, but you're a Quake fan. That's it really.
But I have a theory.
People talk loud when they want to act smart, right?
Correct!
So if we play loud, people might think we're good. Everybody ready? And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, new theory. Maybe we should play so quietly no one can hear us.
There's quite a different amount of reasons why someone might be using this, so let me explain. So you've got the new player who just started the game and it's the only secondary they have, but most of the time they forget about it and blow themselves up with the rocket launcher. The experienced player who prefers to have a backup weapon with them and appreciate good damage and consistency this weapon has when they need it. The guy who wants to use the direct hit but sucks at prediction and aiming, so they pair it with this and 90% of the time it's their main damage output weapon. Or the guy who pairs it with the foiler to transform themselves into a mildly overweight flanker. It's sad to see it mainly overshadowed by the banners and any other secondary weapons Trooper has, since it's a good weapon that you can always rely on no matter what. This still has the same stereotypes from Arsonist, with them preferring burst damage over consistency, but it's actually a bit more common to see within stock, which is surprising enough, and it equipped with the foiler for more clip size and reloading speed.
Nobody uses this for the Trooper. I mean, what else could I really say about it? Nothing, really.
Oh hey, would you look at that? Raw reverted this weapon back to its original form before it was a green boonie blaster. Even after the reworks, it's still amazing just like its former self, albeit not as OP anymore. Some people use it as a combo weapon like the ammo hog, but since, you know, the ammo hog just isn't good anymore at all. Not a lot of people use it, which is kind of strange since you're basically getting free mini crits for good rocket placement and aiming, which is pretty respectable. If you see someone using this, expect them to be comboing a lot with this, but they normally use the G-bomb for the increased time when someone gets flung up into the air, or any launcher really, that's stock, the original, or even the Cowmangler. These guys can either be complete crap or some of the most deadly troopers you could ever see. Or it's the player who got attracted by the 20% faster deploy speed and 20% accurate stat. Oh yeah, I also like it because its reloading sound sounds like a bag of chips being opened. Nobody uses this as well. It's kind of dead, even though it's a somewhat decent weapon. I mean, the only times you'll see this equipped on Trooper is when the person got bored and saw this weapon and the foiler both gave faster reloading speed and decided to see how fast 80% faster reload speed looks like. Other than that, there's nothing else really.
Adding on 2 more stereotypes, these guys either equip real Wrecker's Yard to just spam rockets even faster than what's normal, or they're Soundsmith fan. Yep.
There are actually quite a few reasons why someone might have equipped this. You've got the guy who tries to learn Troller and is using this as a set of training wheels. The guy who pairs it with the aerial bomber or G-bomb to just go around nuking and exploding people while in the air. Or it's that one Troller who can't market garden and uses this as a crutch. Or it's that clueless new player who tries to use it for its intended purpose even though they're just turning themselves into free points when the parachute is out, but you know, the man shreds exist and it's a better option. Some people use this to help extend the distance of their rocket jumping by a bit even though it's just also turning them into free food regardless of what they do. Or it's a memer using this intentionally just to see how it can screw you over in most situations. Or they just equip it in setup time and just spam the spacebar to open and close it constantly, which can be a tiny bit annoying. If you equip any weapons that give knockback, you might be able to push them into pits or off cliffs and watch them try to use this to prolong the inevitable death of them falling off the map, which is pretty funny just watching them and them knowing they'll die regardless. Most of the time it's caused by sentry guns, which can pretty much shut them down instantly. These guys most of the time don't realize how easy of a target they are. These guys like destroying sentry guns a lot and supporting their team, or these guys hate marksmen and ambassador agents, though you can't really blame them since peeking is always going to get you sniped. These guys might use this banner for part of a meme set as a troller without using the market gardener, but they are seen most of the time using the tunnel rat to get twice the melee speed compared to stock or any weapon really. Specialist in melee form. These guys are also trying to backcap or speedrun certain maps, but depending on the map, they will either equip the foiler or the rocket jumper to get around faster or being immune to air blast when they start capping a point. That's it really. This weapon used to be pretty meta for troopers who used the foiler, and since the reworks, nobody actually uses this weapon anymore. Or these guys want to counter that one other trooper or annihilator who is killing their teammates. Maybe it's the clueless new player who saw this gives you half your health back when you kill someone with it. Or these guys use it as a finisher weapon, but other than that, there's nothing else really for this weapon. Half of the time, these guys usually fear nothing at all since the damage vulnerability, and they're usually easy to farm off of because of the damage vulnerability. There's a rare chance that these guys are Arsenal fanboys and saw this weapon in the shop and most likely said, "Oh, that's from Arsenal, why did they use the model here?" Nothing much else really. Some people use this as a mobility tool to help extend the range of their blast jumps, since hitting yourself with this while blast jumping doesn't slow you down and lets you jump up slightly more. Most of the time, it's only used when they don't have a good angle or spot to sync up their blast jump with their launcher, so they hit themselves with this. Half the time, you see someone going at Mach 10 jet speed, so watch out since they're always super fast and can just pop out of nowhere in the sky. So be careful and just keep an eye out for these guys. Also mentioning that since this weapon already has a plus 15 damage bonus, which is 75 damage, and that damage already starts increasing and maxing out at 123, so you can understand why these guys are super dangerous in the beginning, being able to 2-shot most classes and 3-shot brutes. Or, you know, just run mini sentries and make a level 3 sentry. That's it really. These guys prefer combo weapons or want something they can switch out between weapons easily, but these reworks aren't helping this weapon at all, which is why this weapon is always being overshadowed by other weapons. I mean, it's still amazing, but not a lot of people consider this weapon even though it's great. Alright, before I say anything else, I need to explain why I was almost gone for 2 months and why Arsonist Stereotypes took a long time to be made. So let me be clear. Also mentioning why some of the weapon stereotypes in this video are also outdated. So when I originally finished editing Arsonist Stereotypes, the old editing software I had used decided to corrupt the entire video, and I had tried to fix it, but then a day afterward it just stopped opening after that, so I had to redo the entire video, so that took up even more time. And I had decided to add more small details to the video, including some gags and jokes. Took a while to make. Also, during the redo of Arsonist Stereotypes, the Rolf was still adding updates and reworking weapons, so I was behind on certain weapons and getting changed. So that's why some weapons I mentioned here were outdated. Also mentioning the editing software I'm using right now lags all the time, and if I tried to redo this entire video to fix those little mistakes, this video shouldn't even be here right now. And I prefer having some mistakes than keep you guys waiting on another video, so I hope you guys understand this. I'm sorry if this disappoints anyone, but I'll try to keep track of the next video, and I'll try to prevent this from happening again. But anyways, this video was pretty hard but fun to make anyway. But this video wouldn't have been possible without the amazing support of everyone in this video. So thank you to everyone, which includes Guppy, Lazy Toilet, Eddie357, Senpai, Bread, JeffTRS, Panderholic, 16842. I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I'll just put a little text box right here to make it clear. QuincasGames, Sandundertable, The King Legend, and just a random kid. This video wouldn't have been possible without your guys' help, so I can't thank you enough for all the help you've given me. And also you guys watching my videos and liking it. It shows how much you guys like it, so I can't thank you guys enough for liking, commenting, and even subscribing to my channel. I can't really express how thankful I am for the amazing support you guys have given me over the past Stereotype videos, so thanks once again for sticking around. Well, that's all I needed to say, so I hope you guys have a good day and I'll see you guys next time.